It was a quiet Sunday morning, the kind where you sip coffee and let the world wake up around you. I was out front, watering the cherry blossom tree that stood in the center of my lawn like a beacon. The early spring sun filtered through its soft pink petals, casting delicate shadows on the grass below. Every time the breeze blew, the blossoms fluttered like feathers, and for a moment, everything felt still. That tree wasn't just a tree to me. I had planted it 5 years ago, on what would have been my daughter Lily's 8th birthday. She had passed away in a car accident the year before, a senseless crash caused by a distracted driver who'd run a red light. I remember the silence in the hospital room after they turned off the machines, the way her tiny hand felt in mine, already cold. When we buried her, I promised myself I'd create something beautiful in her memory, something alive, something she would have loved. Lily had adored flowers. Every spring she would pick wild ones and run through the yard with them tucked behind her ear. So, I chose the cherry blossom. It reminded me of her softness, her fleeting laughter, her joy. Over time, the tree became more than just a tribute. It became a place I would go to think, to remember, to cry when the house felt too quiet. The neighbors knew. They'd seen me sitting on the bench I placed beside it. Some had brought candles, flowers. One even crocheted a pink ribbon and tied it to the trunk. It was understood, a silent agreement of respect. That was before Karen moved in. Karen came to our neighborhood like a wrecking ball in designer sandals. She introduced herself with a clipboard in hand, boasting about her background in community management and how she was going to whip our lazy, messy HOA into shape. She immediately ran for HOA president and, thanks to a wave of apathy from the rest of the homeowners, she won. From that moment, everything changed. First came the letters about trash bins being left out more than 18 hours. Then the fence color guidelines. Next, people started getting warnings about non-compliant mailbox shapes. It was absurd, but most of us just rolled our eyes and complied. We didn't want the headache. But the morning Karen walked up to me while I was watering Lily's tree, I knew she was about to push the wrong button. "Excuse me," she said, sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She had that tone, sweet, fake, sharp underneath. I turned slowly. "Morning." She pointed at the tree like it was a parked car on her lawn. "This tree isn't HOA approved. It's not on the list of permitted front yard vegetation." I blinked, unsure I'd heard her right. "It's a memorial tree. For my daughter." Karen's expression didn't even flicker. "I'm sorry for your loss, truly. But we all have to follow the rules. And this tree doesn't match the uniform landscape standard for the community." I stared at her. "It's been here for 5 years." She shrugged. "Then I'm surprised the previous board didn't enforce the rules. You'll be receiving a formal notice tomorrow. You have 10 days to remove it." I couldn't respond. My jaw just clenched. I turned back to the tree, but my hand was shaking, and I had to set down the watering can before I dropped it. That evening, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the HOA handbook. There were pages and pages of nonsense, including sections about acceptable mulch colors and mailbox post heights, but nothing about memorial trees. The closest thing was a vague clause about unauthorized modifications to the landscaping that affect the visual harmony of the neighborhood. It was subjective. A weapon in the wrong hands. Sure enough, the letter came the next morning, taped to my door in an envelope stamped "Second Notice," even though it was the first. It stated that if I didn't remove the cherry blossom within 10 days, I'd be fined $150 per day, escalating to legal action after 30 days. My stomach turned. I wasn't going to let this happen. I dug through everything I had, the original receipt for the tree from the nursery, the planting permit I got years ago, even the article the local paper wrote about our neighborhood's memorial gardens, which had featured a photo of Lily's tree and mentioned it by name. Still, it didn't feel like enough. That's when I remembered something I had seen months ago while browsing the city's website, something about the protected tree register. I searched for it, and there it was, a small program that allowed residents to apply for official recognition and protection of trees planted in memory of a loved one, provided they had been in place for more than 3 years and were deemed healthy by the Urban Forestry Division. I immediately called the number listed. A kind woman named Renee picked up. I explained everything, about Lily, about the tree, and about the HOA's demands. She listened quietly, then said, "You're not the first person we've had call because of HOA pressure. Let's schedule an arborist to come out." Within 3 days, a man in a green city jacket showed up with a clipboard and a calm smile. He walked around the tree, took notes, asked a few questions, and nodded. "This is a healthy specimen. And your story, it qualifies. We'll have a plaque out to you by next week. Once it's marked, it's untouchable under the city's protection ordinance." I felt something break loose inside me, a dam of grief and fury and relief. I nodded, too choked up to speak. 2 mornings later, the plaque arrived, a small brushed metal sign with the city's seal and an inscription that read, "Protected Memorial Tree, City Register #774. I attached it to the base of the tree, wiping my eyes as I stepped back to admire it. That's when I saw her again. Karen, standing across the street, watching like a hawk with her phone raised. She took pictures, huffed loudly enough for me to hear, then marched off toward her car while furiously tapping her screen. It didn't matter anymore. She had crossed a line, but so had I, into territory she couldn't touch. Lily's tree was safe. It had roots now, not just in the ground, but in law, in the city's conscience, and in every person who knew what that little pink tree really meant. The plaque shimmered under the morning sun, its brushed metal catching the light as if it were quietly announcing its presence. Protected Memorial Tree, City Register #774. It was small, unobtrusive, respectful. But its meaning? Immense. That plaque was more than just a symbol, it was a shield. A final word. It meant that no amount of HOA paperwork, threats, or passive-aggressive notices could ever uproot Lily's tree. I stood there for a few moments, just looking at it. The cherry blossom swayed gently above, scattering a few delicate petals to the grass below like pink snow. I felt peace for the first time in days. That peace didn't last long. Karen returned later that morning, right on schedule. She always did her inspection walks around 10 a.m., armed with her clipboard and her phone, which she used more for photos than calls. She wore the same kind of power walk outfit she always did, track pants with a fake designer logo, perfectly white sneakers, and that same smug expression that seemed to scream, "I run things here." She stopped dead in her tracks when she saw the plaque. For a moment, she just stared at it, lips pursed tightly, arms crossed. Then, without a word, she stormed across my lawn. "You can't just install a sign without HOA approval," she barked, standing just a few feet from me. I turned calmly to face her. "It's from the city," I said. "It's official. The tree is protected now." Karen narrowed her eyes, as if trying to see whether I was bluffing. The HOA didn't authorize any designation. All landscape modifications need to be submitted to the Architectural Review Committee. "It's not a modification," I replied. "It's a designation. The city reviewed it, sent an arborist, and approved it. This tree is now legally protected by ordinance." She pulled out her phone and began taking photos from every angle, of the tree, the plaque, even me. "I'll be contacting our legal team," she muttered. "This is a clear violation of HOA procedure. You can't just go over our heads." I laughed once, bitterly. "Karen, you're not above the law. This tree is beyond your reach now." That was when she crossed the line again. "I understand you're emotional, but don't think grief exempts you from community standards." That sentence hit like a slap. I could feel my hands clenching, my jaw tightening. I took a slow breath and said nothing. She turned and stormed off, talking into her phone about escalating enforcement and rogue residents. By the next afternoon, I received another letter, this one marked "Final Warning." It stated that I had installed unauthorized signage, and that refusal to comply would result in legal proceedings and a lien against the property. I couldn't even believe it. It was like she was doubling down, even in the face of a legally protected tree. This time, I wasn't going to let it go unanswered. I scanned the letter and emailed it directly to Renee at the Urban Forestry Division. I also attached photos of the plaque, Karen's previous letters, and a copy of the city's tree protection ordinance. Within 2 hours, Renee replied. Her tone was calm but direct. She assured me the plaque was legal, the protection was binding, and any attempt by the HOA to remove, fine, or threaten me over the tree would be met with city enforcement. That wasn't all. She also copied in a city legal representative who confirmed everything in writing, and offered to schedule a meeting with the HOA to clarify jurisdiction. It was the kind of bureaucratic slap that only worked when backed by actual power. And now, I had it. Still, Karen wasn't backing down. The HOA called a special meeting to address what they called non-compliance disputes. Flyers were taped to every door in the neighborhood. One of my neighbors, Maria, brought it to me with a sigh. "She's going after you again," she said, shaking her head. "Let her," I replied. "She doesn't realize she's already lost." When I arrived at the meeting, the community center was fuller than I'd seen it in years. Clearly, people were tired of Karen's reign. Some had even brought lawn chairs. There was whispering, muttering, eye-rolling. Karen stood at the front of the room, flanked by 2 other board members, her binder stacked with papers and a slideshow already queued up on the projector. She began her speech with practiced authority. "Thank you all for attending. As HOA president, it's my duty to ensure our neighborhood remains orderly and in compliance with our agreed-upon guidelines. Unfortunately, a recent issue has arisen involving an unauthorized tree and a resident's refusal to adhere to proper procedures." A picture of Lily's cherry blossom flashed on the screen behind her. I stood up slowly. "That tree is on the city's protected memorial tree register. You're using this platform to shame a grieving parent in front of their neighbors for planting something beautiful in memory of their child." Karen didn't even flinch. "This isn't personal. It's about rules." One of the board members looked visibly uncomfortable. "We received documentation from the city affirming the tree's protection status. I've read it. There's nothing we can do." Karen shook her head. "The plaque wasn't submitted through ARC channels. It sets a dangerous precedent." I stepped forward, holding up the printed email from the city legal counsel. "You're threatening to fine me and lien my house over a tree you have zero jurisdiction over. And I've brought legal proof. If you persist, the city is ready to file a formal cease and desist against this HOA." A wave of murmuring rippled through the crowd. A few people clapped. Others just looked stunned. Karen's mouth opened, then closed again. She turned to her fellow board members, but neither of them would meet her eyes. Then came the quiet voice of an older man in the back. "It's not about the tree, Karen. It's about you. We're tired of you making this place miserable." Someone else called out, "Yeah, I got fined for my garden gnome." Another, "She told me my wreath was too personal." Within minutes, the crowd turned. The meeting spiraled into complaints about Karen's leadership, her abuse of power, her obsession with control. The board took an impromptu vote right there, motioning to suspend all pending violations and review Karen's actions as HOA president. She tried to argue, but her voice was drowned out by the very community she had tried to dominate. I didn't gloat. I just walked out into the cool evening air, back to the quiet safety of my home, where Lily's tree stood peacefully under the stars. It was lit softly by the porch light, its petals glowing in the darkness like lanterns. That night, I sat beneath its branches and just breathed. Not in anger. Not in fear. Just in peace. For the first time in a long time. The night after the HOA meeting felt like the first true moment of calm I'd had in weeks. I sat under the cherry blossom tree, watching petals drift gently to the lawn, and let the stillness settle around me like a warm blanket. There was no knock on the door, no crinkled letter stuffed in the mailbox, no Karen standing at the curb with her ever-present clipboard. Just silence, and the soft glow of the moonlight casting shadows through the branches. The tree was safe. Lily's memory was safe. And for the first time in this entire ordeal, I truly believed it was over. But peace is fragile in neighborhoods like mine, especially when someone like Karen has tasted power. Even after her public embarrassment at the HOA meeting, she didn't disappear immediately. She went quiet, sure, but it was the kind of quiet that simmers with resentment rather than resignation. She didn't issue any public statements, no apologies, no acknowledgement of overstepping her authority. Instead, her yard grew pristine to the point of parody, every blade of grass trimmed with military precision, every bush sculpted into geometric perfection, as if she were saying, "This is how it should be done." Then came the resignation email. It landed in everyone's inbox about a week after the meeting. The subject line read, "A message from your HOA president." The tone was exactly what you'd expect from Karen, performative humility layered with passive aggression. She claimed she was stepping down due to toxic negativity and unjust personal attacks, insisted that she had only ever wanted what was best for the community, and warned of the dangers of a mob rule. She ended the message with a veiled jab at me. Sometimes emotions can cloud reason, and while grief deserves compassion, it should never exempt someone from structure. That line hit me hard, not because it hurt, but because it confirmed everything I'd felt since this began. Karen never saw Lily's tree as a tribute. To her, it was just an offense to uniformity, a crack in the glossy perfection she demanded from everyone. In her world, grief was something to be scheduled, boxed, trimmed back like an overgrown hedge. But the community didn't see it that way. After the resignation, something unexpected happened. Neighbors began approaching me, not out of pity, but solidarity. Maria, the one who had warned me about the meeting, brought over a pot of tea and sat with me on the porch. "You didn't just stand up for the tree," she said. "You stood up for all of us. She's been making life here miserable for years." Others shared their own frustrations. The Jenkins family down the street confessed they had received fines for their kids' sidewalk chalk drawings. Another neighbor had been cited for planting sunflowers, without prior landscape approval. Even the elderly couple next door, who kept to themselves and rarely spoke to anyone, quietly thanked me while watering their garden. It became clear that Karen's obsession with control had been a slow, creeping problem for everyone, but no one had wanted to challenge her. No one until the tree. Until me. The new interim HOA president, a retired school teacher named Henry, reached out a few days later and asked if I'd consider joining the landscape committee. He said the board wanted to revise the community guidelines to make room for personal expression, especially for memorials and tributes. I politely declined the position, but I offered to help review the new language. If nothing else, I wanted to make sure that no one else would have to go through what I did just to preserve something they loved. Around the same time, a local news crew knocked on my door. Apparently, word of the public HOA dispute had made its way into the newsroom. A memorial tree, a grieving parent, an HOA overstepping its authority, it was the kind of human interest story that people liked. I agreed to the interview, but I made it clear, I didn't want it to be about shaming anyone. I wanted it to be about remembering Lily, and about the importance of allowing beauty and meaning to exist even in the most rigid places. They filmed me standing beside the tree, its blossoms fluttering in the wind. I told them how it came to be planted, how it had grown, and how I'd fought to protect it. The reporter asked about Karen, but I kept my answers neutral. The focus, I said, should always be on what matters: love, memory, and the right to honor them. When the segment aired later that week, I was overwhelmed by the response. Strangers sent emails thanking me for speaking up. A father from another city wrote to tell me he'd planted a tree for his son and was now going to apply for local protection status. A woman from our own neighborhood dropped off a small handmade wind chime with Lily's name etched into it. I hung it on a low branch, and now, every time the breeze rolls through, it sings softly in the leaves. The cherry blossom continued to bloom, and with it, so did something else: community. Real community. Not the kind enforced by fines and threats, but the kind built on empathy and connection. People started gardening more. Kids played outside longer. The Jenkins family painted a mural on the side of their garage with neighborhood kids, and no one batted an eye. The old rulebook was revised, and now, a special clause exists that protects memorials and artistic expression, as long as it doesn't harm others. I visit the tree every day. Sometimes I sit on the bench with a book. Sometimes I bring a cup of tea and just listen to the rustle of leaves and chimes. And sometimes I bring flowers, not because I need to, but because I want to. Lily would have loved that. I've come to realize that the fight was never just about a tree. It was about space. Space to grieve. Space to heal. Space to remember someone without permission. And now that space is mine. Ours. Untouchable. Karen never returned to power. Last I heard, she moved to a gated community across town, one with even stricter regulations. I suppose she found the kind of control she was looking for. But here, in our little neighborhood, something changed for the better. And the tree? It bloomed brighter than ever this year. Some days, I swear I can still hear Lily's laughter in the wind. When the petals fall just right, when the sun hits the blossoms in the early morning light, it feels like she's right there, dancing under the branches, her smile warm and wide. I reach out and catch a petal in my hand, hold it tight for a moment, and let it go again. She's gone. But her tree stands. And no one, not even Karen, can take that away from me.